Melyssa Ford and Joe Budden are exchanging crazy shots with other shade being thrown by members of the cast like Mona. So let's break down every single piece of shade that has been exchanged. First, right here is you see Melyssa Ford broadcasting right out of iHeart Studios, which is affiliated with longtime op of Joe Budden, Charlamagne. Everybody knows Joe Budden and Charlamagne have no love lost, but the truth is what underlines their beef is how they perceive content creation, right? Joe Budden doesn't think iHeart rewards creators, and Charlamagne is a fan of getting down with a big business and also taking over the world. So is Melyssa Ford doing that tried and true thing of when you break up with somebody, business or otherwise, you run into their arms of another opposition? And that looks exactly what she appears to be doing. Remember when Mandy left the Joe Budden network? She kind of did the same thing, positioning Joe as some moron who doesn't know how to run a network, linking up and championing the Black Effect network that was ran by Charlamagne. But that isn't the only interesting exchange that's been going on. Next, there was this clip where Joe Budden talked about why he isn't wearing shades.
I don't think you worn shades since
been a while.
A minute.
Been a long time. Should have left you.
It ain't been as bright in here.
I think it's been, for me, honestly, 3 months.
That's about right.
Nah, about 4.
Now, that was an allusion to how when Joe Budden was on the show with Melyssa Ford towards the end, he always had to wear shades because he had to hide what he was thinking as a result of Melyssa Ford's escapades. You know, like always complaining, always kind of making things awkward on the show. And now with Mona's arrival, he doesn't feel the need to wear shades. I guess it's a new era where transparency can be shown. But let's see if that continues with Mona. Speaking of Mona, there's a couple instances that involve her. Number one being this back and forth where Joe Budden is talking to Mona and Mona says something like, oh, it's hard to work with guys. And look what Joe Budden says.
It's hard being around a bunch of men, yo. It's so hard. Like, I thought I was a man.
Don't sue. Whatever you do, don't sue. We don't care how you feel.
You always
All right.
Simple.
Now, he would say, don't sue. Could that be an allusion to Melyssa Ford? Right? Melyssa Ford seems to have stepped away from the Joe Budden podcast, and she did so by saying her mental health isn't the best. Allegedly, this is what's rumored. Could that have been the gateway to a lawsuit if Joe Budden didn't guarantee some type of possible NDA where she would receive money for not talking? I mean, Joe has said on the podcast, if y'all want to leave Flip and Melyssa Ford, I'm okay with y'all signing an NDA. I'll pay y'all for it. Plus, we also have to recall that Joe Budden has alluded to another lawsuit that occurred on the Joe Budden network where apparently some type of bewildered co-host took him to court for actions that would take place on air. And let's look at Mona's comments. She's already saying some of the language that Melyssa Ford used to say in terms of how hard it is to work with men. Remember when Melyssa Ford first got there, she was saying, I'm a girl's guy, I'm a guy's girl, and, I'd like to be one of the guys. But then as she continued to work on the show, she would pivot all the way to saying, man, there's so much testosterone here. It's different than Hollywood Unlocked. For Melyssa Ford to have game plan or show the blueprint of how Mona would react, and Mona's already saying this, but a few episodes in, we got to monitor Mona because Mona is showing cracks already, and that could be a sign of her not feeling the culture at the Joe Budden network. But at least this time, Joe Budden is putting in certain movements like separating her from Flip. Maybe this would have helped Melyssa Ford stay longer if he would have ran that same play. But then there's the pictures. For quite some time, when the Joe Budden podcast broadcasts and when they do their pod, there has been a series of art style pictures behind them where people drew up pictures of the cast, and Melyssa Ford was there for quite some time, even after she left. So people thought that she was coming back. Well, Mona would cut on her Instagram and put videos of how everybody was there and their pictures and stuff like that.
Hey guys, that's Joe Budden, that's Parties, that's Imani, that's Ice, that's Flip, and who the is that with the beautiful tongue? Demona, that's right.
And she would highlight how Melyssa Ford is no longer featured and her art has been removed. Now, this could be a series of strategies that are totally intentional, or these people just lack general self-awareness and are partaking in this because, hey, it's whatever, it's vibes. But I don't think so. I think Melyssa Ford doing that whole thing with iHeartMedia is very strategic, and we have to see if Melyssa Ford somehow ends with Hot and Bothered being on the Black Effect or iHeart. They certainly have the numbers to be on the Black Effect if you consider how low, let's say something like Selective Ignorance by Mandy is. For that to be under a network and Melyssa Ford's not to be, it just says something. So pretty soon, I think we will see Melyssa Ford end up on iHeart or the Black Effect Network. Either that or she's doing this for absolutely no reason other than to get at Joe. And this is the dangers of when you leave the Joe Budden Network or when you leave a big show in general. It doesn't necessarily apply to Joe Budden. Sometimes your operation can look really, really bad. Like, look at this, Melyssa Ford. I posted this picture on Twitter. A lot of people were making fun of her and how she looked. I still think she's a very attractive woman. I know the people in the comments, she's ugly, Danny. Well, show me your girl. And then we could have a girl for girl with this Melyssa Ford picture. So it just looks bad. The lighting is off. You could tell that this is clearly strictly for audio reasons only. This is not the type of podcast studio that has been retrofitted to mimic something like what Horrible Decisions, the Need to Know WTF Media does, where the podcast studio was now basically a TV show. This, she doesn't even have a budget. She clearly did not dress how she normally would dress for the Joe Budden podcast, even though that was something that she had trouble with. A lot of people would make fun of it, and people say that she did not look good. But I mean, it's different for a woman. It's a lot harder for them to kind of navigate appearances. However, you see her trying to continue the process. One thing I do notice is that, man, it's like I don't even really hear about Melyssa Ford too much. So it just goes to show you the visibility that the broadcast of the Joe Budden Network gets to give you. And it's not just the Joe Budden Network. It's the rabid fan base. The Twitter Spaces community that will always talk about you. The Reddit communities that have about hundreds of thousands of engagement points. I'm talking about posts, views. Once you leave that ecosystem, for better or worse, you are kind of forgotten and only brought up in relation to being on the Joe Budden Show. And the things that you talk about aren't necessarily going to be put to the top as usual. But let me know what you think about all of these weird instances. They're still fighting some sort of Cold War that's occurring, and I'm here to report on it because this is the war in Pod Rack, yo. Everybody sending shots. We're going to have to see if the people who made their bed in 2025 are okay with the bed that they will be in 2026. Will they be sleeping in that bed? Will they be okay with that bed? Will Melyssa Ford have gotten her mental health, but at the expense of attention? Because sometimes lack of attention can get people losing some of their mental health. I don't know if Melyssa Ford's ready to be irrelevant again. Many of the folks who say they rock with Melyssa Ford and don't like Joe Budden, they only really kept up with Melyssa Ford because she was on the Joe Budden Show. And, a lot of you Melyssa Ford folks who be in my comment section, I never see y'all talking about how good Hot and Bothered is. All y'all complain about is how Joe Budden is evil. Y'all don't be in the comment section for her podcast. Y'all watch none of the content. The only time you comment on it is to dunk on the culture of the Joe Budden Show. Go support that lady. Stop complaining about people following or, reporting on it, and don't say, oh, we hating on Melyssa Ford because we won't let her be. People care about this subject, and obviously these people still care about each other because they're still shooting at each other. There's a reason Melyssa Ford is trying to put this picture of her behind the iHeart mic out there. She's trying to show she's still lit, but it might have backfired because it doesn't look like she's lit anymore. With that said, follow me on Instagram to Stop TV. Follow me on Twitter to Stop TV. Follow me on Patreon. Plus, let me know what you think about that Mona video. I mean, that was interesting, man. You think you're wading into dangerous waters, as Wall Street Trapper would say. It's a little dangerous. Maybe you shouldn't have highlighted how the Melyssa Ford picture has been removed and you've been the one added. All right, y'all. Danny from the Stop. Peace.